friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the Lawn Fawn Zesty Lemon die set. So this is going to be an all dies, no stamps card. I'm going to start by pulling out some scraps of cardstock, all from Lawn Fawn. I have sticky note, speckled eggshell, cilantro, and noble fir. And I'm going to start by die cutting the different parts of my lemons and leaves. And then I'm going to begin to add some Distress Oxide over top to color those in a bit. The first shade that I'm using is Squeeze Lemonade, which seemed appropriate. And my die cuts ended up staying in the paper, and I decided to leave them that way because I thought it might be easier to do my ink blending. But you could easily just blend it on the outside edges of the lemon shapes. I would say the little segments of the lemons would be a bit trickier if you separate that out, but still possible. You could just use a little finger dauber to get in those tiny little places. So now I'm darkening that up using some mustard seed Distress Oxide ink, and I'm not covering the entire lemon, just trying to create some light and dark areas, keeping that toward the center of the cut lemon and then just towards one side of the whole lemons. And then I'm going to darken that up even further with a little bit of fossilized amber. And this I'm just going to use a little bit of, I don't want to get too heavy-handed with that. I just want to create some nice contrast on those lemons. I'll add a little bit of that fossilized amber to the inner part of the segments as well. And then I'm going to move on to my leaves. The first ones are the ones that I cut out of the cilantro cardstock, and I'm blending on some Mowed Lawn Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to do that all at the base of each leaf where it is the wider tip, I would say. And I'm just going to add a little bit of shading on there. And then I wanted to darken that up a bit as well, so I'm going to bring in some Lucky Clover, and I'll add a tiny bit of that just right over top of the mowed lawn. Not too much on there, but I just wanted to have enough to have a bit of contrast again, like I mentioned. So just going to continue working my way around all of those leaves. And then I'll switch back to the Mowed Lawn ink blending tool to just smooth out the transition between the blend. And then I'm going to bring in the darker leaves, which are the noble fir. And on those, I'm just going to add a little bit of Lucky Clover since they're fairly dark already. Then I'll set these ink blended die cuts aside for now, and I'm going to work on my background. So I've die cut a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock using the stitched scalloped rectangle frames. I'm just using the inner part of that for now, and I'm going to go back to my yellow shades. I'm using that Squeeze Lemonade and then the mustard seed down at the bottom, and just creating kind of like a semicircle on that panel, keeping that color down toward the bottom and away from all four sides. And then I'm going to add some water splatter to that. So I'm just squirting some onto an acrylic block, and then I can pick that up with a paintbrush and tap it off the side. That's going to give me a bit more control and also give me a finer spray of dots. And then I'll let that soak into the cardstock for maybe 30 seconds, and then I'll dab that up with a paper towel. And then I wanted to add a bit of sparkle to this background as well. So I'm going to take some liquid stardust, shake that up really good because the pigment does settle down to the bottom. And then I will squirt some of that onto my acrylic block as well and tap that on the background. So it's not super noticeable head on, but when you tip it into the light, it adds a really beautiful sparkle to it. I'm also going to add some of the mustard seed Distress Oxide ink just to have a bit of a darker yellow splatter in the background. And again, just tapping off the side so I get a super fine spray with that thin paintbrush. And then I'm going to set this panel aside to dry. Then I'll take another piece of sticky note cardstock and I'm going to blend more Distress Oxide ink onto that. So I'm starting with the Squeeze Lemonade once again, And then I'm going to add some mustard seed. And this is going to be for my die cut sentiment later on, so I didn't need to go very high up this panel, just large enough for me to fit those alphabet dies later on. So I just wanted to add that now while I have all my Distress Oxide inks out, and then I can set that aside. Now I'm going to die cut a few more bits and pieces using some more Lawn Fawn cardstock and also the leftover ink blended sticky note cardstock. Then I took the little faces and die cut those out of the lemons, and I also die cut them out of Storm Cloud cardstock. I did that off screen because it was a little bit fiddly and I had to get right over top of it. But now I'm going to just add some little dabs of glue using the glue tube to the cheek area, and then I can add the little cheek circles that also come in this die set right over top. And that is die cut using some ballet slippers cardstock, and I'm using my Studio Katia embellishment wand to help me pick those up and set those down into place just to make it really easy. I also poked all the holes out of the lemons and backed them with some number 2 pencil cardstock just to give them a bit more texture, and also just adds another element of, depth on the card with those darker colored dots showing through. I'll set these lemons aside and then work on the cut portions of the lemon. So once again, I'm going to use that number 2 pencil cardstock for the base, and then I have the speckled eggshell cardstock for the white part. I believe that's called the pith. And then I will just take some more glue tube and add that to the different sections in those little wells, and then I'll pop out the segments using the Distress ink colored sticky note cardstock, and I'll just pop those into place to fill those in. And I will use one whole cut slice, and then the other one I'm going to cut in half just to give me 2 different looks on the card with those cut sections. Once I'm done with those, I can assemble my flowers. So I'll do one of these on screen for you as well. I cut the flowers out of white cardstock, use that Distress Oxide ink colored sticky note cardstock for the next piece, and then added a little touch of ballet slippers for the center. So I'm going to be doing a 2-part sentiment for today's card, and I wanted this to be heat embossed. So I'm taking some more of that Storm Cloud cardstock and treating it with the Rabbit Hole Designs powder tool to eliminate any static cling. And then I have a sentiment from On the Beach that says, "It's your birthday," and then also "Seize the day." And I had meant to mask off the "Seize the day," but I forgot to, but no worries. I'm going to coat those sentiments with some white embossing powder, make sure I have them really well covered, and then I can tap off any excess. And then I can take a paintbrush and just wipe off the embossing powder from that word seize, so I want to replace that with the word squeeze later on. So I'm just going to remove that, and then I will bring my heat gun to that. I like to heat it up from the back side first and then towards the front. That just helps eliminate some warping. And I'm going to heat that until it's all melted and shiny. While I have my Misty out, I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card, and I'm using the Make Lemonade mini stamp set and also Party Animal, and stamping in sunflower ink. And I did the little picture of lemonade and a lemon and the sentiment that says "Let's Party." And I stamped that down quite a few times to make sure it was going to show up, because this ink does dry back a bit. I wanted that to be nice and bold. Now I'm ready to start assembling my card. So I'm going to take that background that I use the Distress Oxide ink on and just center that on the front of the card. And then I have die cut the frame again out of some more ballet slippers cardstock and added some foam tape to the back of that. I just cut it down into very thin strips. and then I'll peel off those release papers, and then I'm going to line that up with the edges of that background panel. Should fit perfectly because it is the same die that I use for both. Then I'm going to go back to that ink blended sticky note panel and bring out my Finley's ABCs. And like I said, I want to spell out the word squeeze. So I'm grabbing the letters I need. I'm going to have to die cut the E 3 times, but I just die cut those out of the bottom, so I'll get this nice ombre effect on each of those letters. And before I adhere them down, I want to line them up on the card and kind of get them spaced out so I have an idea of where I want them to go. And I wanted to kind of stagger them a little bit just to make them look a little extra whimsical and, not so straight. Once I'm happy with the placement, I will grab my EK Success reverse tweezers and use those to help me get each of those letters into place. And I accidentally adhered the Q down a little too low, so I did have to carefully peel that back up and just lift that up a tiny bit higher on the card. So then I'll just continue working my way across the card, making sure that everything is nicely adhered and just about spaced evenly apart. I want all of my letters to have about the same distance between them, but just have that staggered look, like I said, from the top and the bottom. So once I finish up these last 2 letters, I'm going to bring in the other 2 parts of my sentiment, which I cut down into some thin strips, and I'm going to pop those up on some foam tape, and I'm going to play around with how I want them to go on the card. Originally, I wanted it to say, "It's your birthday, squeeze the day." So "It's your birthday" was supposed to go up at the top above the word squeeze, but I didn't leave enough room at the top, so I decided that I would put them kind of just right next to each other. But as I was adhering them down, I just decided I didn't like the look of that. So I decided to move the "It's your birthday" down toward the bottom of the scene, but I didn't want to adhere it just yet because I knew I would want to layer that on top of some other elements. So I just set that aside for now. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring in all of my images and start adhering those down. So the one little lemon that's going toward the top, I adhered with liquid glue. And then the other 2 lemons I have some foam tape on the back of, and that way I can slide some of those leaves behind them and just have a bit more dimension on the card. So now I have those 2 slices, the one that is whole and the one I cut, and I'm just trying to figure out the placement on the card. Once I'm happy with it, I can start adhering down and then pop the other lemon up like I said, and I'm going to lift that up a little bit higher on the card to leave that space for the sentiment down below. I decided to pop up the half slice as well, so I just added a bit more foam tape to that, and I'm going to tuck it behind the lemon over on the left to give that a little bit of a layered look, and then I can bring in the rest of that sentiment and press that down into place. And I do like the look of that. I think it was a happy accident there. So now I'm going to start filling in with some of these leaves. I just want to make sure that the leaves don't go further than the edge of that scalloped border because I don't want anything to get bent when I tuck it into an envelope to give it to the recipient. So I'm just keeping them within the confines of that frame. I did add the stem, but then I realized that the stem probably would come from the side and not the top, even though it kind of looked cute at the top. So instead I turned it towards the higher lemon with the little eyelashes. And then I'm going to continue just adding those leaves, using some of the smaller ones up near the sentiment so that they won't cover up too much of the letters. I still want you to be able to read the word squeeze because that's the pun here on this card. So just going to continue adding some of the darker leaves and some of the lighter leaves here and there and layering things up until I like the look of it. I wanted to add another stem, but the more I looked at them, the more I realized I just didn't like them on this particular card. I think they could be really cute on a card, but there was nothing else that was that dark brown on this card, and to me they just felt a little bit out of place, so I am going to end up just pulling those off and not using them. But I'm going to continue adding those leaves like I mentioned, just kind of tucking them behind things here and there. And it's like you can see, I really did try to make those stems work, but I just didn't like them. So I pulled off one, but eventually I am going to pull them both off. So I'm going to finish with the last few leaves here and there, tucking one toward the bottom of the scene, and if I need to, I just trim off a little bit so I can tuck it a little bit further so it doesn't extend over that frame like I mentioned. And then I wanted to have one coming up out of the top of the frame just to add a little bit of whimsy up there as well. And I didn't end up using all of the leaves. I just left a few. I used mainly the lighter ones. I liked those better, but I like how the darker ones kind of break up the color palette as well and just give you a pop of contrast. So then I have my little flowers, and I did make 5 of those. So I'm going to remove that other stem and pop one of those flowers in place of that, since it did tear up the cardstock a little bit. And then I'm just kind of figuring out the placement for the others, just kind of adding them here and there wherever I think they should go. I put one at the top of the card by that leaf, and then another one on the kind of girly lemon with the eyelashes, so it looks like she's almost wearing it in her hair or on her head. And then I added one more to kind of the center part of the card between the slices and that girl lemon. I tried to stick a leaf in there, but it just wouldn't fit without covering up too much of that girl lemon's face. To finish off this card, I added a bit of Stardust stickles to the centers of each of the flowers, and then I decided to put it toward the bottom of each of the letters in the word squeeze as well. And that will add a nice bit of sparkle, since a lot of the liquid Stardust did end up getting covered up. There's still a few little splatter droplets toward the top of the scene, but yeah, so I will lift that up to the camera so you can see how that catches the light and give you another peek at the inside. This card is going to be on the Lawn Fawn blog and YouTube channel today as well, so if you'd like to watch it again, you can check it out over there. And if you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. All of the products I used are linked and listed in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.